3 years ago, I handed my engagement ring to my mother thinking she'd keep it safe. 2 days later, I saw that ring on my sister's finger. No explanation. No apology. Just the kind of stares from family that say, stay quiet, and disappear. I didn't just lose my wedding. I lost my fiancé, my dress, the design I'd sketched in blood and tears, and my name. In the world of elite architecture. All of it. Handed to my sister Delilah Hartley. And me? I was labeled too sensitive. Unstable. The story they told was that I just gave up. But what they didn't know is that I never disappeared. I transformed. While they popped champagne to celebrate what they'd stolen, I was sitting next to the very man they once tried to erase from every room. A billionaire. One who, not long after, would crush their empire with a single nod. They thought they took everything from me. But they forgot. I was the one who laid the foundation. This is my story. Of a ring. A betrayal. And a return they never saw coming. The gray velvet box rested in my mother's palm like it had never belonged to me. She turned the ring gently, silver catching the chandelier light, then said with her usual calm, "I'll get it polished, sweetheart. Just a morning errand." I nodded, not thinking twice. That ring wasn't just jewelry. It was the one Nathan and I chose after months of working side by side on the Phoenix Grove project. The first resort I'd been given full authority to design. A double helix band symbolizing two architectural currents intertwined, modern and classical. Every carved line was a slice from the sketches I drew at 2 a.m. with cold coffee and pencil dust on my hands. My mother knew that. Delilah did too. But when I handed that ring over, I still naively believed my family would respect what belonged to me. 3 days later, I found Delilah in the living room. She sat cross-legged on the white leather chair, hair in a perfectly messy bun, sipping some pale green detox water. I meant to just say hello. But then I saw it. The ring. On her ring finger. I froze. At first, I thought it was a cheap knockoff. Some awful joke. But then I saw the tiny engraving inside, the message Nathan and I had etched in together. Built to last. My throat tightened. Delilah. I managed to keep my voice steady. Why are you wearing that ring? She glanced at her hand like she hadn't noticed. Then shrugged. Oh, Mom said you didn't need it anymore. That, you postponed the wedding. I'm just borrowing it for a photo shoot. I didn't respond right away. Part of me wanted to believe this was a bizarre misunderstanding. But her face held not a trace of guilt. To Delilah, everything was a prop for her image. And me, everything I created, was now just another discarded set piece. I walked straight to Mom's room. The door was open. She was folding napkins for the dinner party. I stepped in, keeping my tone as neutral as possible. Mom, the ring. Delilah's wearing it. She didn't look up. Oh, I thought you knew. Delilah's holding onto it for a while. Why? Sweetheart, calm down. You told Nathan you needed time, didn't you? With the design stress, the contract delays, your emotions, you weren't clear. I just thought it was time to set things on a better path. A better path? My fists clenched. That's my engagement ring. She set the napkin down and finally looked me in the eye. Gone was her usual softness. What stared back was the cold, decisive face of the bank manager she used to be. Vivian, Delilah is more stable. People are starting to question your choices. You're too emotional. Nathan needs someone more balanced. And you're drifting from the center. I wanted to scream. Wanted to ask how the same woman who once clapped for my first design at 23 could now brush off my feelings like nothing. But I said nothing. I turned and walked out into the kitchen. And there it was. The only thing that hadn't changed. The old fridge, still covered in the student design drafts I used to pin up. I grabbed my phone. Called Nathan. Once. Twice. On the third try, he picked up, voice uneasy. Viv, I'm kind of tied up. The ring, my sister's wearing it. Silence. Then a sigh. Vivian, maybe, things are shifting. I think we should talk later. You gave it to her? She didn't. She's just borrowing it to. I hung up before he could finish. I walked back to my room, shut the door, and stared at myself in the mirror. My eyes were red not from tears, but from fury. A week ago, I was lead architect on Ellington Estate's biggest resort project. I had a fiancé, a globally greenlit design, and a family at least on paper that backed me. Now? What did I have? A stolen ring. A sister who smirked in the face of my silence. A man too spineless to stand by what was right. And a mother who looked at me like a failed investment. I looked down at my hand, where the ring used to be. Empty. I didn't know what I'd do next. But I knew one thing. I couldn't sit still and let them rewrite my story. Not this time. Not when everything I built was being used to craft someone else's dream. I opened my laptop, pulled up the Phoenix Grove design file, stared at every line I had drawn. Then I closed it. I wasn't going to fix it. I was going to rebuild. On my terms. On ground no one could steal. And they? They were going to watch it happen. From the back row. The next morning, I got an email from a florist I'd ordered from for the wedding. The subject line hit cold. Thank you, Delilah Hartley, for confirming the order transfer. I nearly dropped my phone. Delilah. I opened the email. My order white orchids with baby's breath, arranged in a timeless neutral palette, had been updated with the client's name as requested. I called immediately. A soft female voice answered. Hi, this is Vivian Hartley. I ordered flowers for a wedding on the 16th next month. I just received a confirmation saying the order was transferred to Delilah Hartley. That's a mistake. The voice hesitated. Oh, Miss Vivian. According to our system notes, you sent an email canceling your order, and Miss Delilah was authorized to manage it from here. I never sent any email like that. She paused. I'm very sorry. But the system shows the request came from your home IP address. Everything has been updated under Delilah's name. If you'd like changes, you'll need to contact the authorized person directly. I lowered the phone, heart pounding in my temples. I opened my laptop and checked my inbox. My name was still on the account. But in the sent folder were a string of emails I never wrote. An email canceling my dress order. An email postponing the venue. An email transferring authority to Delilah. All sent during the 2 days I'd been out of town on a site visit with the design team. I closed my eyes and tried to breathe. I remembered the night before I left, leaving my laptop open on the kitchen table, still logged in. Family Wi-Fi still connected. Someone had gotten in. Someone had planned this. And they knew exactly what to do to erase me quietly. I drove to the bridal boutique where I'd ordered my gown. The receptionist gave me a wary look. Miss Hartley, she said gently. I thought you came in yesterday. I didn't. My sister might have. She exhaled. Well, she tried the gown on. It's been altered to her measurements. We can't reverse it now. That gown is mine. I ordered it 4 months ago. She has no right to wear it. We only follow confirmed emails, she replied, her tone suddenly guarded. I walked out of there with fury burning like acid in my chest. That afternoon, I got a wedding invitation. Not mean. Ivory embossed. Elegant stock. The bride and groom. Delilah Hartley and Nathan Cross. I didn't cry. There were no tears left. Just a hollow pit the size of a sinkhole in my chest. I stood there, invitation in hand, reading it 3 times just to be sure it was real. I used to think no one could steal a wedding from a woman. That I was too sharp, too intuitive to miss the signs of betrayal. I believed Nathan loved me for who I was, strong, independent, driven. And I truly believed that even if my mother played favorites, she'd never do something that would disgrace our family's name. I was wrong. So painfully wrong. No one shoved me out of my own life. They erased me. Quietly replaced me with someone more on brand. Softer. More marketable. A prettier picture. And me? Too trusting. Too buried in work. I missed the last moment I had to protect my own future. I tucked the wedding invitation into a drawer. I didn't tear it. I didn't burn it. I kept it. As proof. Proof they didn't just betray me. They erased me. That night, I pulled up the Phoenix Grove resort design on my big screen. Zoomed in on every detail. The curved glass columns like ocean waves. The spa that floated in a lotus pond. The skylight dome inspired by Sedona's red rock arches. Every element was mine. The vision. The sketches. The soul. And I knew Delilah was using that exact blueprint to launch herself as the rising design star of the year. Backed by Nathan. I should have crumbled. But instead, I did something else. I closed the laptop. Booked a flight. One way. No return. Destination. Mexico. I wasn't running. I was going to take back what they stole. Me. And no one else. I arrived in Tulum on a heavy, windless afternoon. The sea lay flat like glass. My taxi pulled up to the gates of Sol del Viento, the resort where I had designed the VIP suites 2 years earlier for a high-profile client I never met in person. We worked entirely through his assistant. Every request was confidential. Every detail, obsessively premium. I still remember it was my idea to use handmade tiles from Oaxaca. The only kind that cooled under the sun, without burning bare feet. I stepped through the gates with just a backpack on my shoulder. No luggage, no plans. Just my passport, my laptop, and a humiliation that hadn't found its voice yet. The receptionist greeted me softly in Spanish. I didn't have a reservation. Didn't need one. They remembered me la diseñadora del pabellón dorado, the designer of the Golden Pavilion. I gave a small nod. Rented the quietest room at the end of the hall, second floor, overlooking the coconut grove. For 3 days, I didn't open my phone. No emails. No social media. Only sketch paper, pencils, and the sound of waves trying to soothe a mind that had cracked wide open. Every morning, I sat on the balcony, redrawing what I could remember of Phoenix Grove. Not to reclaim it, but to hold on to the part of it that was still mine. On the 4th afternoon, I went to the cafe in the main building. I needed caffeine. I needed a taste of Normalife, only for an hour. I chose a table near the corner, back to the wall. An old habit from someone who'd been stabbed in the back, figuratively. He was there, behind the espresso counter. Eyes down on a porcelain cup, hands pouring milk with no rush. I recognized him instantly, even from the blurred headshot in his file. Rhys Ellington, the reclusive billionaire, owner of Ellington Estates. The client who hired me to design Phoenix Grove. Before Nathan coincidentally showed up and took over the project. I almost turned to leave. But he looked up. And said, like he wasn't even surprised. Arabica or Robusta? I froze. I'm not ready to talk, I stammered. I just need coffee. Then good thing, he replied, a flicker of a smile. I'm only offering coffee. No questions asked. I sat down. For reasons I couldn't name. Maybe exhaustion. Maybe the strange piece of not being looked at like I was a walking disaster. He placed the steaming cup in front of me. I thought you didn't drink what you make? I asked, implying he wasn't staff. Sometimes I need to remember where I came from, Rhys said. My father used to say, if you forget what small work feels like, you'll never know what you're truly losing. I gave a short laugh, not quite amused. I just lost a fiancé, a wedding, and part of my reputation. Rhys said nothing. Instead, he reached into his jacket and pulled out a thin leather notebook. He placed it on the table between us. I know who actually designed Phoenix Grove, he said. I looked at him for real, for the first time. How? Metadata. The account that submitted the first draft wasn't Nathan's. It was yours. I kept every version. My grip tightened around the coffee handle. Then why didn't you say anything? Because I wanted to see if you'd fight or vanish. And what do you think I chose? Rhys tilted his head. You came here. You didn't go public. You didn't burn bridges. You redrew it from scratch. I didn't know if that was a compliment or a test. But his eyes held no pity. No regret. Only recognition. You want to work again? He asked, suddenly. Not for revenge, not for redemption. Just to make something no one can ever take from you again? I didn't answer. But that afternoon, I followed him to a small studio tucked at the edge of the resort. Inside, a drafting table, soft amber lights, the smell of sawdust, and classic jazz playing low through a ceiling speaker. Rhys handed me a key. No one comes in here but you and me. I turned on the drawing tablet. My hands shook. For the first time in months, I drew not for a contract, not for a wedding, not for appearances. I drew because I was still here. Because what they stole wasn't the ring, wasn't the fame. It was the belief that I was still worthy of making something beautiful. And I was taking it back, one line at a time. 3 weeks later, Delilah went live. I hadn't planned to watch. I was in the studio, sketching the upgraded glass framework for the floating spa, a refined evolution of the original Phoenix Grove design. But then Ninemi, old collaborator from Austin, texted me. She's presenting Phoenix like it's hers, same curves, same earth tones, second-floor glass pillars, even your whole light as the backbone of the space line. Watch it, now. I opened my laptop, pulled up Delilah's channel. Over 18,000 people were watching live. Perfect lighting. Delilah stood beside a 3D model of Phoenix Grove. Unchanged, untouched. She wore a cream silk jumpsuit, hair loose, makeup styled to scream effortless natural beauty. Behind her, a logo. Delilah Bloom Studio. I saw the name and the blood rose to my throat. Delilah lifted her hand, gesturing softly to a section of the structure. I wanted to create a space where light doesn't just illuminate but nourishes. Like that first feeling you get when walking into a memory. This space is for every woman who's ever felt out of place in her own home. Word. 4. Word. I had written that in a concept pitch I'd sent Reese 6 months ago. I stood up. Cold. But my hands weren't trembling anymore. They were clenched. I sat back at the desk. Opened the folder labeled PHX, Master, Original, DWG. The original Phoenix Grove designs. Every file untouched, unedited. I screenshot each sketch. With timestamps. Opened the old pitch deck. Pulled the slides. Metadata. Creation dates. IP logs. Submission emails to Ellington Studios. Then I logged into an old student-era Instagram account, @VivBuiltIt. I hadn't touched it in nearly 3 years. I made one post. Photo 1. A hand-drawn sketch of the floating spa. Photo 2. The original slide describing light as memory timestamped last October. Photo 3. The thank you email from Ellington's assistant after my first submission. Caption. Design isn't what you perform, it's what you prove. Phoenix Grove, conceptualized, drafted, and submitted months before the world knew her name. Number original design number. Viv built it. And I added one final hashtag. Delilah live reveal. Within 15 minutes, it started to crumble. Comments on her live stream shifted tone. Wait, @VivBuiltIt just posted the sketchesite months old. Oh. So who actually designed Phoenix Grove? Metadata doesn't lie, sis. Delilah kept going, voice starting to quiver. Her eyes darted left toward the live stream phone, where comments were now flooding in. A production staff member leaned in, whispering in her ear. Delilah's face went pale. Then the stream froze for a second. She came back with a forced smile. We're experiencing some minor technical issues. Thank you all for your patience. I didn't laugh. Didn't cry. I just took screenshots. Saved every comment. Filed away every bit of truth. Not to destroy anyone, but to protect what I built. No one could say Delilah was just inspired. She copied the entire foundation. The lines, the words, the vision. She hadn't just taken my fiancé. She'd stolen the best pieces of me, and wore them like her own legacy. That afternoon, Reese knocked on the studio door. He set a cup of tea on my desk. The internet's on fire. I nodded. I didn't say anything. I just posted the facts. He nodded once. That is a voice. I looked at him. You knew, didn't you? Everything she used had your system's fingerprint on it. Of course I knew, Rice said. But only the creator has the right to speak. That night, I shut off the lights. Didn't go online. Didn't answer press calls though they were screaming my name. I just sat in the quiet of the studio, fingers on the sketches, mind still as ocean before a storm. They could act. They could perform. But I built the stage. And that stage had just collapsed beneath them. The rumors exploded like fireworks on Christmas night. From one quiet post on my old account, Social media unraveled the story I had once stayed silent about. And this time, they told it right. Online headlines rolled in. Phoenix Grove, who really designed it? From blueprints to groom, the sister who stole it all and the woman who took it back. Delilah Bloom, rising star or systematic plagiarist? Delilah stayed silent. So did Nathan. My family? They deleted every wedding photo off Facebook, leaving only a vague status. Family is the most sacred thing. I nearly laughed. 3 weeks later, a card arrived at my door. Not from Delilah. Not from my mother. From Reese. Same premium paper. But no gold foil. No useless embellishments. Just a simple message. Vivian, I don't care for the spotlight, but I'd be honored if you stood beside me, never in anyone's shadow. I set the card down. Didn't need time to think. We held a quiet ceremony in Tuscany, Italy. No celebrity guests. No live stream. Just real friends. People who knew I wasn't some version of Delilah. People who had seen me break and rise without anyone propping me up. My dress wasn't designer couture. I found it by chance in a small artisan shop in Florence. Raw silk, hand-stitched embroidery down the spine. Each thread echoing the same lines I sketched in my earliest designs. Reese waited for me under the grapevine arch, where the sunlight turned gold over everything he thought he'd lost. Until I appeared. He didn't look at me like I was a prize. He looked at me like I was the one right thing life had finally gotten right. After the ceremony, he took my hand and led me out to a balcony overlooking the valley. I don't want revenge for you, he said, his voice calm. I want you to rebuild. On your own land. And if you'll let me, I'll stand beside you. I didn't cry. I didn't need to. Because for the first time in my life, I didn't feel like I had to fight for space. Or prove my worth. I just breathed. And knew I was finally living the life I designed. 3 days after the wedding, a quiet feature appeared in the Architectural Post. A profile piece in their Women Who Lead section. Vivian Hartley Ellington. The woman behind designs the world once misattributed. I didn't share it. Didn't have to. The community did it for me. The hashtag number Viv built it past 1 million uses in a week. And the new one? Number Mrs. Ellington knows. Became a rally cry for women who'd ever been written out of their own story. Riss didn't say much. He just placed a warm hand on my back every time I froze. Seeing my name finally met with respect instead of pity. I didn't do interviews. No book deals. No talk shows. Just one email. To the person who once called me unstable. To my mother. Subject. No reply needed. Body. Thank you for leaving my name off the wedding invite. Because of that, I learned I deserve more than what you ever taught me to settle for. I hit send. Then turned off my phone. That night, Reese and I sat beneath the grapevines. Where it all began. He asked. If everything disappeared tomorrow, what would you do? I rested my head on his shoulder. I'd start sketching again. From scratch. On empty ground. Just like I did before. And this time, I wouldn't fear anyone showing up to take it away. I wasn't planning to go. I was going to toss the invitation into the fireplace. Let its ashes take with it every last illusion my family still clung to. But Reese just looked at me quietly and pushed the card gently back across the table. We should go. Why? To watch the next act in their performance? Number. To remind them. The lead role is back. So that Sunday morning, I slipped on a smoky emerald satin midi dress, platinum-toned flats, and tied my hair up simply. Reese wore a deep blue shirt, no blazer, no tie, and still carried a presence that made any room straighten its posture. We drove back to Austin. The place I once called home. The place that once wrote me out of my own life. My parents' house had been renovated. Fresh paint on the gate. Trimmed lawn. The family nameplate replaced with the Bloom Cross Residence. Like I'd never existed in that bloodline. As I stepped inside, every laugh and voice froze. Delilah stood in the foyer. In a cream-white dress with a neckline that dove to her sternum. Smiling like the spotlight had always been hers. Until she saw me. And the man standing next to me. Reese. The same man who declined to fund her brand 3 years ago. The same man she once pretended not to know by name. All eyes shifted to me. She spoke first. Vivian. I didn't think you'd come. Shame if I didn't, I smiled. A 1-year anniversary party. The family's crowning glory. Ugh. I pulled out a chair and sat exactly where they'd placed me. The seat near the kitchen door, where my mother used to station me to help serve. I glanced at the nameplate. Vivian Hartley. Not Vivian Ellington. They still couldn't stomach the fact I was married into an empire. I took the nameplate off. Reese rested his hand on my shoulder. A silent quay. I stood, reached into my bag, pulled out a thick envelope, placed it right in the center of the table. These are legal documents. As of next week, the Saffron Bloom Hotel project, the one you've been marketing as an independent vision, will lose its funding. Reese now holds majority investment, and I am the principal stakeholder. Delilah's face went pale. Nathan stared into his wine glass, mute. My mother rose, voice trembling, trying to salvage the moment. Vivian, there's no need to cause a scene. This is a family dinner. I looked at her, smiled, gently. You taught me not to interrupt people while they're eating. So I'll keep it short. I turned to Delilah. You didn't steal me. You borrowed me. And your loan's overdue. Her hand shook. Champagne spilled down her dress. A glass hit the floor with a shattering crack. Silence. I walked out. Never looked back. On the drive home, Reese held my hand, giving it a soft squeeze. How does it feel? Like standing in my own house for the first time. Without choking. He smiled. You just took everything back. I shook my head. I just reclaimed myself. That evening, a video leaked online. A clip of me placing the documents on the table, Delilah's glass crashing down, and Reese behind me, silent and composed like a shadow of power. No narration was needed. The internet gave the moment its own name. The wrong sister showed up. And, this time, no one needed to explain who was right or who was wrong. The world had seen it for themselves. The next morning, I woke to the sound of my phone ringing nonstop. Messages, emails, media requests, podcasts. Everyone wanted an interview. Everyone wanted to hear my side after the anniversary party clip was shared over 5 million times overnight. Reese made coffee like he always did. Silently handed me a latte. New questions. He already knew. I wouldn't respond. I didn't need to. Online, the hashtag number Viv built it climbed the charts again. But this time, it wasn't just because I'd been stolen from. It was because I had shown them. I was no longer a supporting character in my own life. Delilah still hadn't spoken. But her sponsors had. One post from a furniture brand she once represented read, "We are temporarily suspending our collaboration with Delilah Bloom Studio while investigating allegations of intellectual property violations." Temporarily? Maybe. But everyone in the media world knows temporary is just a polite version of permanent. 3 days later, a long article appeared on Design Truth, an independent blog with serious pull in the architecture world. The author was anonymous, but I recognized the voice immediately. Ava. My cousin. The only person who had ever seen Delilah copy my sketches over the years. And stayed silent. Until now. The article included a photo of Delilah's presentation slides, placed side by side with one of my original notebook drawings, signed in my signature purple ink from 3 years ago. No commentary needed. The internet started asking questions. What about Delilah is real? If she didn't design, didn't love, didn't live, who even is she? Meanwhile, Nathan remained silent. No statements. No clarifications. Rumors swirled that he was trying to sell off the rest of his company's shares, to retreat from public attention. I didn't care. He had chosen to stand between two sisters. And that silence? That was his final betrayal. A week later, I received an invitation from TEDx Austin. We'd like to invite you to speak on truth, reinvention, and what happens when you reclaim your voice. I stared at the screen. Not from surprise, but because exactly 1 year ago, Delilah had gone on a podcast and said something that left people in awe. A living space should be where you don't have to speak to be understood. That line? Was mean. I wrote it in my design journal in 2019. After restoring a historic home for a PTSD survivor. Now, I was the one invited to the stage she once tried to claim. I clicked accept. From the kitchen doorway, Reese looked over at me. His voice soft. This time, you're telling the story? I nodded. Not because they deserved to hear it, but because I deserved to say it. The next day, I opened my old sketchbook. The pages were worn at the edges, speckled with ink. Each line a scar, but also a mirror, reflecting the truest version of me. The one who'd been forgotten, replaced, and labeled unstable. But now, I had a new name. Vivian Hartley Ellington. And, this time, I would write the story. No one else gets to hold the pen again. The TEDx backstage wasn't as noisy as I expected. It was quiet. Clean. Soft amber lights glowed overhead, and a faint scent of mint drifted from a teacup on the table. The stage coordinator handed me a discreet headset mic, offering a warm, encouraging smile. I nodded, but my eyes stayed on the screen just beyond the curtain. There, in bold text, was the introduction that would appear when I stepped into the spotlight. Vivian Hartley Ellington. Designer. Survivor. Builder. I took a deep breath. Not because I was nervous, but because, for the first time in years, I was walking onto a stage, not to defend myself, but to reclaim the life I had rebuilt. With my hands, with my silence, and with sketches that had once been stolen. When the host said my name, applause rose softly. Not loud, not frenzied. Just right. Like they weren't here to be entertained. They were here to understand. I stepped out. My shoes made no sound. My gaze went straight to the front row, where Reese sat with both hands gripping the chair. He didn't nod. He didn't smile. He just stood firm. Proud. Silent. And I began. I used to think losing a man to my own sister was the worst kind of heartbreak. But I was wrong. The room fell utterly still. The worst isn't losing someone. It's losing your voice. It's being cut out of your own story. Robbed of the chance to be asked. Is this true? And are you okay? I clicked the remote. The first slide appeared. A rough sketch on old paper, pencil faded, with my signature purple ink scrawled in the corner. Phoenix Grove, Concept 01. VH Private. This was the first concept sketch for Phoenix Grovia Resort designed to blend natural light with emotional healing spaces. I drew it at 2 a. Ink on my hands. Head spinning. All eyes. The next slide appeared. Delilah, standing in front of a 3D replica. Identical in structure. No citation. No credit. Just her logo. And this is how people used my voice. Without ever needing me. I wasn't angry. I didn't cry. I just told the truth. My sister married my fiancé. She wore the ring I designed. The dress I chose. Spoke words I'd once written in a journal. She took interviews, stood on stages, accepted deals. While I sat in the back row holding an invitation with my name misspelled. A collective inhale swept through the room. But you can't replace roots if you don't know how to dig the soil. Click. Final slide. A photo of my workshop in Tulum. Where I began again. Alone. With no spotlight, no mic. Just me and a blank page. I didn't seek revenge, I rebuilt. I didn't go to the press. I let design speak. And I didn't fight for the spotlight. I paused. Then smiled. I built it. This time, the applause surged like a wave. When I stepped down, Reese was waiting. He said nothing. But his eyes held the quiet nod he never gave in public. That evening, the speech was posted to TEDx's official channel. Within 24 hours, it hit 1.2 million views. The comment section flooded with messages. Thank you for saying what I never could. I lost my career to family too. You weren't robbed. You rebuilt an empire from the wreckage. A major publication ran the headline. The woman replaced at her own wedding. Just reclaimed an industry in 17 minutes. Delilah remained silent. Her social accounts were locked. Some brands quietly removed her image. A marketing campaign was pulled last minute. And for the first time, no one came to her defense. Not because I attacked her, but because, finally, The spotlight landed where it had never truly touched before. On something real. And this time, I didn't walk out of the light. I stayed. As myself. 3 days after the TEDx talk, my inbox overflowed. Messages from design schools inviting me to speak. From publishers asking to turn the talk into a book. From anonymous women handwritten letters. Sharing how their dreams were taken. How they were pushed out of the very visions they had built. I read every word. Not for the fame, but because those letters reminded me. When you speak at the right moment, your voice doesn't just save you. It opens the door for everyone else who's been locked out. That morning, Reese laid a newspaper on the breakfast table. On the front page was a photo of me. Not airbrushed or made up, but a candid shot from my studio. Graphite-streaked hands, messy bun, sketching mid-thought. The woman who drew her way out. The headline read. I laughed. They're calling me the woman who drew her escape. Reese poured the coffee. They're wrong, he said. You didn't escape. You rebuilt. Later that same day, another email came in. From Nathan Cross. Subject. A late apology. It was short, but clear. I knew. I saw Delilah take your sketchbook. I knew it was your design for Phoenix. I stayed silent out of fear, thinking your family would reconcile in time. But I was wrong. And I'm no longer someone who deserves forgiveness. I just hope you found something better. I didn't reply. Not out of anger, but because what I needed from him. Courage, honesty, one moment of standing with me. He couldn't give when it mattered. Now, that apology wasn't for me. It was for him. To face the fact that he'd let go of the one woman who built the only thing in his life worth admiring. That evening, I sat alone at my work desk. In my hands was a vintage gold bracelet. One I thought had been lost since my grandmother passed away. When I was a girl, she'd had my name engraved inside it. It was the only piece she hadn't left to anyone else. Only to me. But after her funeral, my mother said she'd sent it to be polished. And then it vanished. I saw it again 3 weeks ago. On the wrist of a well-known influencer Delilah had once partnered with. I messaged the woman quietly. She was surprised. Said, Delilah gifted it to me, said it was hers. I sent a photo of the engraving. My name etched clearly underneath. She replied with just one line. I'm sorry. This should have never shown up in any photos. I'll return it. And today, it's back in my hands. I held the bracelet. Turned it over. The engraving was faint, but still there. V.H. Vivian Hartley. Not Delilah. Not anyone else. The bracelet wasn't worth much in money. But it was symbolic. A quiet message. From the first woman who ever taught me how to make something beautiful with my hands. She didn't say much. She just believed in me enough. I looked at it for a long time. Then slid it onto my right wrist. On my left, I wore my wedding band. The one Reese had custom designed. No diamonds. No spectacle. Just a smooth gold circle. With an inscription inside. Let her speak. The next morning, I sat at my laptop. A blank document open. The cursor blinking. I started typing. Not a speech. Not a blueprint. But the opening lines of a book I never imagined I'd write. This isn't a story about a thief. It's the journey of someone who was robbed. And chose not to become like them, to take everything back. Each sentence landed like wooden beams laid on fresh foundation. I wasn't writing to strike back. I was writing to prove. No one gets to write the ending of my story. But me. Not ever again. The book continued each morning. When the sunlight was still soft. And my phone hadn't started to buzz. I called it the second blueprint. Not because I intended to retell the past. But because I was building something new. A life where my voice would no longer be dismissed, edited, or stolen. I wrote about how people can take everything you've created. Your ideas, your labor, your love. And slap their own name on it. I wrote about what it feels like to look at a wedding photo. And see your own face replaced. In a setting you designed down to the last flower. But I also wrote about how, in silence and pain, you can begin again. With a single pencil line. And rebuild the dream from scratch. As I was typing chapter 3, My phone buzzed. A name I never expected to see lit up the screen. Delilah. I didn't answer. But she left a voicemail. So, you're writing a book. It's good. I've heard some of it. Seems like you're turning people against me. Maybe we should talk. Before this goes too far. No apology. No ownership. Just fear. I dropped the voicemail into a folder labeled Things That Don't Deserve a Reply. I no longer felt the need to engage with someone who always treated me like a free idea bank. They call that sisterhood. I call it an emotional extraction model, with blood ties as camouflage. That afternoon, I got an email from an international design organization. They wanted to award me Breakthrough Design Author of the Year for Phoenix Grove. After a full, independent verification of my original intellectual property, I read the glowing sentence in the message. We believe you designed a space that reshapes emotion. And emotion, in turn, reshapes the story. I didn't cry. I just smiled. Softly. And enough. On the day of the ceremony, I didn't wear a ball gown. I wore a white button-down, linen trousers, and the same gray coat I'd worn in my very first studio in Tulum. Reese walked me in. Not into the spotlight, but just far enough to stand quietly by the door, watching. As always, choosing to stand beside me, never in front. When the host called my name, I walked up. No long speech, just one sentence. Thank you for honoring not just my design, but the voice I was once forced to silence. Now, the applause rang out. Not because I was the woman who lost everything, but because I was the woman who rebuilt everything. Not with scandal, but with foundation. That night, I opened Instagram, scrolled through hundreds of messages from women who wrote, I was fired from the project I started. I thought I was crazy. Thank you for showing me I'm not alone. My husband said my idea was unrealistic. 3 months later, his best friend launched a startup with it. I thought I broke. But now I'm rebuilding. I replied to everyone. No advice. Just confirmation. I believe you. I've been there. And you will come through. I never wanted to become a symbol. I only ever wanted a life where my voice wouldn't be called too much or dramatic. I wasn't born to move quietly through someone else's story, as if I didn't exist. I was born to build, to raise, to redraw myself from the ground up. And this time, no one, no matter how calculated or cruel, can erase the mark I've carved into the concrete of their world. One early autumn morning, I received a white envelope. No return address. Smooth paper, black ink, careful handwriting that felt like it had been written with strained politeness. I knew before I opened it. It was from my mother. The first line read, Vivian, I watched your TEDx talk, I read your article, and I don't recognize you anymore. He sat still, reading on. You've changed, you're colder now. Distant. I miss the little girl who believed family was everything. I don't expect forgiveness. But I hope you understand everything I did. She's weaker than you. I never thought you needed protecting. I folded the letter. Not out of anger, but because I finally understood. They never saw me as someone to be loved, only as a foundation. A platform for others to stand taller. And when I started building something for myself, they called it cold. I didn't respond. Instead, I mailed back a scanned copy of my wedding invitation. Just the image. No note. No caption. Just proof that I had stepped out of the frame they built for me. A few days later, Delilah messaged me. You really won. They turned on me. The brands. Nathan. Even Mom. I thought I was good enough. But, in the end, the shadow I borrowed from you stopped shining. I read the words. Then deleted them. I didn't win. I just lived, honestly. Something she never learned how to do without stealing from someone else. That night, Reese and I sat on the porch. The wind had shifted, and the air smelled faintly of pine wood and cinnamon tea. I held the first printed copy of the book. A white cover, my name printed clearly at the top. Not yours, and what I rebuilt after they took everything. by Vivian Hartley Ellington. I opened the first page. There, a quote from my grandfather. Don't fear making them uncomfortable. Solid architecture always embarrasses lazy builders. Reese reached over and touched my wrist, where my grandmother's gold bracelet still sat quietly, like a silent witness. You didn't just rebuild, he said. You redesigned everything so no one could tear it down again. I smiled. Not brightly. Not for show. Just enough. The next morning, Reese called me into the living room. He pointed to the television screen. A national news segment was playing. The headline: Truth in the Creative Industry. When family becomes the most dangerous kind of thief. And, in the visual montage, sketches of Phoenix Grove appeared. This time, with my name clearly signed at the bottom of each page. For the first time, the media didn't call me the victim. They called me a visionary architect and a woman redefining ethical standards in modern design. A book. I didn't need to strip anyone of their reputation. I only needed to live. So fully, so undeniably, that they could never erase me again. On the day my book was released, there was no celebration. No ribbon cutting. No champagne. No teary speeches. I simply sat inside a small bookstore in the Mission District. The same place that once hung my very first sketch next to paintings by unknown students. The shop owner quietly handed me a special edition. The cover embossed with my name in steel gray ink. The exact shade of the walls in the first office I ever designed. Inside, a vindication. For anyone who has ever written out of their own story. You don't need permission to return. 2. I pulled out my pen. Signed one copy. Then another. Outside, a line began to form. Middle-aged women. Young girls. A man holding his daughter. Her dress printed with architectural blueprints. They weren't there for the scandal. They came for the truth. They came because they, too, had been stripped of something. And I was living proof that you can lose everything and still rebuild yourself. With the one thing no one can ever steal. Your voice. That afternoon, I got a message from a real estate developer in Palm Springs. We'd love to invite you to be the lead architect for our new complex. And if you're open to it, we'd like to name the main building the Hartley. He blinked. Let the silence settle before typing my response. That name was once buried under fake concrete. Put it up high. To remind them that real foundations never vanish. 2 weeks later, Reese and I arrived in Palm Springs. The project began. I led a team of female architects. Every one of them, someone who had once been overlooked, had their ideas stolen, or been called difficult just for being direct. We weren't fighting for a seat at the table. We were building it. And on the day we laid the first brick, I stood on the red soil, sunlight pouring through my hard hat, holding a rolled-up set of blueprints. Next to me, Reese handed me a water bottle. He didn't speak, just placed his hand on my shoulder, the same way he always had. A quiet promise. He wasn't leading the way. He was walking beside me. That night, we returned to a quiet apartment. I opened the window, looked out at a sky completely cleared of its old storm. I opened a drawer, took out the first ring ever stolen from my hand. Not to wear it, but to place it inside a small glass case, etched with the words, what they thought was gone forever. Next to it, I placed a bracelet with my name engraved, a rough sketch of Phoenix Grove, and a printed copy of my book's cover. I called it the evidence box. Not to relive the pain, but to remind myself. I don't need to forget in order to move forward. I only need to face it. And walk on. With steady legs. Because they could take everything. The wedding. The name. The career. But they couldn't take the woman who created all of it. And that woman, me, was now carving her name into an entirely new world. The ending doesn't come when you disappear quietly. The ending comes when you rewrite the old story in your own voice. And this time, no one gets to erase it.